Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Kind of an impromptu one. This kind of just happened. I spoke to a commenter yesterday. We were able to get in touch and chat. So hopefully my vocals will be a bit more measured this time. Last time it seemed like my volume was like way below our guests. So hopefully this time it will. I bumped up the gain pretty big. So hopefully it's not too loud. Let me know if it's like too gainy or whatever. And if it is, just let me know. Let me grab the guest and we'll start shortly. Let's see. Yeah, let me know if the volume is too high, too low. I'll make sure. I'll ask someone once our guest gets in just to make sure they're level. Because I usually just like upload these directly. I don't like download them and re-upload them just because, just to make it easier. Just so I have to bump the levels. I guess I could. I'm kind of lazy, to be honest. Okay, let's see. Yes, let me, again, make sure if the volume's good, and let me get the guest in. Da 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 da. Just waiting on the guest, seeing if he's gonna answer. Hmm. He just needs a second to get his headphones in order. So I'll just lay chill for a hot second. How's everybody? Hope everyone's doing good. If you didn't see it, me and Pure Kino, another channel you guys might be familiar with, started a podcast, and our first episode aired today. If you have not checked that out, check the community page, and you should be able to find it. Hopefully that'll be something you guys will enjoy. What's up, peoples? What up, Lectival and 531 DT5A? I don't know. Hopefully I'm pronouncing those right. Hopefully I'm pronouncing those right. What a day. I think I have found the topic for my next longer form essay, which I'm very excited about. No spoilers, of course. That's gonna be on the DL. You'll never know. Or will you? No, you won't know. I'm gonna keep it to myself. Can't let you fuckers know. Just waiting for our guest. Should be here shortly. I'll make sure to put in the description. I'll put hey, this is when the actual thing starts. All right, we're good. All right, give me a second, and I'll bring them in. Clearing my throat. What's popping on this day, Graham? Not much, not much. Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Here. If you can say something, I just want to make sure our levels are good to go.
All right, cool. Sounds good.
Chat, how are our levels? Are even? Am I too quiet? Is he too loud? Etc. Etc. Just want to make sure it's good because usually I mess up with that. Just waiting to hear from the chat just to get a read. Make adjustments before we start. Chat, everything good?
Everything good with me, man.
Even. Perfect. All right, cool. Let's just hop in. Yeah, so we spoke via comments the other day in regard to my reject modernity, my video on the reject modernity, embrace masculinity thing. And you commented, we had a kind of a back and forth. Yeah, I personally found a lot of sort of cognitive dissonance in your comments, which I'd like to address. But basically,
Okay.
I'll kind of let you sort of give your take. But basically, your view was that bullying can be used as an effective tool to help people, I suppose.
That is correct. Yes, I believe that.
Okay, yeah, if you want to elaborate on that, just for the audience, so they can kind
So,
of get your viewpoint.
here's the my point on that. Hazing and bullying can be used to kind of, I guess, fix behavior and to build character and, like have somebody have thicker skin. Um, like, for example, a great example is the military, right? You go into basic training, they yell and scream at you, they confuse you, they discombobulate you, and that sort of, I guess, there's no here's this. There's an old saying called pressure and heat will create a diamond, and pretty much that's what the military does. Is they put a lot of pressure on you. They make you have lack of sleep. They're physically um, demanding you. You're doing a lot of push-ups, sit-ups, whatever you're doing. They're yelling at you. Things are crazy. You haven't seen your parents in who knows how long. You haven't seen your family, your job, your regular life. So, in a much smaller scale, um, even when you get to your own units, there's slight hazing. Obviously, they're not going to pour alcohol down your throat. They're not going to beat you or anything like that. And that would be unacceptable. But with hazing, light hazing, I think that it can turn someone who, like me, who was a spurg, into a person that's more well-adjusted and not so stupid, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No. So just to kind of
Okay.
confirm, what, I guess, what is your definition of spurg?
A spurg, someone who's not very well-adjusted. I would say socially awkward. Not very confident. Someone like that.
Yeah,
And again,
maybe.
I used to be and still am to an extent. I'm not perfect, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, maybe for the sake of clarity, just for the audience, maybe let's stick with maybe just say socially awkward. That'd be probably better.
sorry. Yeah,
No worries.
again, I kind of have no filter, so I'm trying my best to not say anything
No,
too off the wall.
no worries. So the issue is I'm already kind of seeing issues because while I agree with you that what you're speaking of can be used effectively, it really depends on the context. So in the military, the entire point of the hazing and sort of like yelling and all that in the military is sort of to, well, it's got a couple of main goals. My ex roommate was a Marine,
Mhm.
and she kind of gave me the rundown. For one, it's really to kind of break down your ego, to sort of like
Mhm.
sort of make you sort of like it gets you in more of a um, team oriented mindset. So for example, if you're, with your squad mates and you're all going through hell, that in a sense it kind of bonds you. In a sense, it kind of helps you kind of come together and work as a team because you can kind of
That's
relate to
correct.
each other with that. And also just, from a more, I don't know what the best word is, from a more sort of like literal perspective, when there's gunfire and grenades going off in your face, you have to be able to remain calm. So if you can kind of be
Absolutely.
sensitized to someone screaming in your face, that's very effective. However, the big difference there is that this is a this is a the environments we're talking about are not analogous whatsoever. In the military, this is used for a very specific, concentrated purpose, to sort of alleviate danger and make the unit the best possible functioning force. However, but also there's the fact that people in the military sign up for the military. They are willingly going into this environment where they know what, most people who enter the military, for the most part, they know what to expect. It's not like, oh my God, this is something completely different. For example, if I were to go into like a boxing class and the coach was like acting like a drill sergeant to me, I'd probably be like, what the fuck? I just came in for a boxing class. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that seems like a very bad analogous situation. The second thing to note is when we talk about the differentiation between bullying and light hazing. So light hazing is, so I remember I read a study on this because we actually had a guy come on before talking about this. Full disclosure, he was a bit of a lunatic. He kind of like framed it as if like bullying is okay because we should allow bullying because it's not fair to the bullies if you suppress their bullying. I don't know. It was his framing of it was very weird. I don't
That's
really
pretty
know.
ridiculous. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. So an example. So just for example, an example you used in the comments where you're talking about what was it? You were talking about like a friend of yours, and they were like, hey, you say to him, hey, you're getting a bit chunky there, Porky. What's going on? And he says,
exactly, yeah. It's just busting his chops a little bit, right?
Well, the issue here is then it says like, oh, okay, I don't know, man. I've been kind of down in the dumps lately. And you say, that's gay. Let's go work out about it. So,
Truth.
So the issue there is that, if someone's sort of like study after study has shown that when someone's in sort of like a headspace like that, like someone, if they're like going through depression or stuff like that, that's sort of like, hey, fatty, or like kind of that's gay, that actually doesn't help them. It actually makes them more. This is sort of why like that whole thing when you're dealing with like we should all like try to motivate people to work out and be healthy, of course, but that's sort of like hardcore, like you have to insult them to get them to get off their ass. Numerous studies have shown this actually only makes it worse, because usually if someone is in a state like that, they're already probably doing pretty bad. They probably have low self-esteem, and kind of compounding that, for if you're someone who's like socially well adjusted or you're doing okay, and someone like kind of gives you a little bit of that, that's one thing because the person's already in like a more of a good headspace. But in fact, studies have shown that if you do that with someone who is sort of like down in the dumps, it actually can prevent them from self-improving. A better way to approach that would be, and it's the issue I have with this framing is that it seems like from what you're doing, you have a magnanimous goal. You're trying to get this person to kind of, hey man, don't be sad. Let's motivate and hop into the gym, right?
Yes, I would say so. And
yeah, so I guess my question is in this case, why do you have to say, hey, getting a bit chunky there, Porky, that's gay, let's go work out, instead of saying something such as, oh, hey man, seems like you're kind of dumb, so I'm heading to the gym later, you want to come along?
And that is because that is the relationship that me and that friend have.
Okay.
He gives me shit, I give him shit, and it's not me. That's not how we are all the time. That is just two guys busting each other's chops. I'm short, but I'm in pretty good shape. He's fat, but he's also pretty tall. So you see what I'm saying? So he gives me shit for being short, and we laugh about it. I give him shit for being fat, and we laugh about it. And
okay, just real quick, just to confirm. So we're talking about this sort of interaction between two individuals who already have a pre-established relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
Because he's my friend.
Okay, so these two things are totally different. It's one, like my best friend is like pretty big, and sometimes I'll call him a fat fuck. But the reason I can call him that is because, and like he gives me shit too, the reason we can do that is because we're friends. There is a established relationship there where we know that like, hey, I can say that and they don't mean it. That isn't even close to sort of like how, like, that's the difference between this like friends giving each other shit and bullying, which is usually like not necessarily a stranger, but someone who you don't have that relationship with kind of harassing you or giving you shit. Yeah, because it like, again, if my friend came up to me and said like, "Hey, what's up, motherfucker?" I'm like, "Oh, what's up, dude?" Like, of course I know he's joking. If a random stranger
Yeah.
on the street comes up to me and is like, "Hey, what's up, motherfucker?" I'm probably gonna be like, what?" Like, so you see the major difference
Well,
there, right?
let me give you an example of when I was, again, lightly hazed. Um, just for some background, I work in EMS. I'm an EMT, and I've been doing it for a few years now. But when I first started, uh, all the guys that I was working with, they were pretty, I'd say, very masculine men, very, very much like I don't know what to call it other than just they were very masculine men. Um, so they don't do a lot of small talk. They don't do a lot of feelings talk. I went there, and when I first started, it was I think I was like I must have been 18 or 19, I think. And I said something about it was looking back, it's kind of funny because I'd probably say the same, think at least think the same shit today, which is like I said something I forgot what I said, but it was something along the lines of like, wow, I was watching some anime the other day, and 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 one of the dudes was like, who the fuck asked? It was hilarious, dude. Again, looking back at it, it's hilarious because again, like now that I'm a more kind of senior guy at a different place in a different state, completely different area. Um, Sometimes you have new guys that will just come up and say the stupidest shit ever, or they'll say something really embarrassing, and you kind of just want to tell them like, dude, shut the fuck up before you embarrass yourself any further. Um, but
So yeah,
that, for
but
example, that was an example of me having some light hazing, and that corrected that action. So I never talked about that stupid shit anymore to them because
wait, hang on,
I
wait.
now
So
know my now I know my audience. You know what I mean?
wait, so just to confirm, so you're passionate about anime, I assume?
No, not anymore. I mean, I watch it every now and then, but
But at least back then, so you liked anime and you didn't feel
yes,
comfortable talking about it with the people who I suppose were supposed to be your friends?
no, they were not my friends. They were my coworkers.
Okay, so this wasn't really, but I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, so what was the person's intention with saying that?
To have me not talk about that anymore because other people are probably going to rip into me much worse than he was.
So, all right, so is that, so, but how do you, so you're kind of like implying that there was a magnanimous intention with what he was stating. Like
That's my best
he
guess.
was
I never
like,
fucking asked him about it.
okay, but so how do you know he just wasn't being a dick and just thinking you're a fucking
Because
loser for liking anime?
now that I'm older and I've been around this area and this kind of field for a while now, I realize that it's kind of like whenever your dad does something when you're younger and you kind of don't understand it, but then now that you're older, you're like, okay, now I get it. It's one of those
So,
things where it's like he didn't have to tell me why he was doing it. Now that I'm older and now that I've been around this area for a while now and I've been around this field for a while, I'm like, okay, I know now that he was trying to get me to not say that anymore and trying to really drive that home because if he said, "Oh, hey, I don't really care about that. I don't really want to talk about it," then I would have just went and talked to somebody else about it. Or if he said, "Oh, people will make fun of you for talking about that," then
how do
it
you
would I
how
would
do
go to
you
someone else and talk to them.
how do you know the second person you talked to wouldn't have liked anime and you guys could have shot the shit over anime?
Oh, I did. I did anyways. But it kind of
Oh,
drove that point home of
well, it
I
seems
need to
like,
find my audience
well,
and
yeah, but it
I need to
seems
know
like,
my audience well enough.
yeah, well, it seems, but yeah, but it seems like in that case, Like if the guy just said, like, cool, oh, I'm not really into anime, he could have just said something like that if he wanted to do that. This, like, it seems, I don't know how to put this. It seems like you're being very, not innocent, not naive. You're being very charitable in that, like, hey, maybe this guy was doing this because he was actually trying to help me out because he was trying to prevent me from, because he knew the other guys on the squad or something were not into anime and he didn't want me to get teased for it. And so he said that so I would like cool it so I wouldn't be teased. So yeah, that's a very charitable reading. I'm surprised like you had that. Like that's good. I think it shows a good, like, kind-hearted side of you. The issues I have with that is one, if that wasn't the case, like maybe he was just being a dick and just didn't give a shit about your stupid anime. And it may have prevented you from reaching out to someone else and like just like, oh yeah, anime, I love that, cool shit, that's awesome, and having a bond with someone else. The second thing is, or I would ask, if I had a friend who like was like talk to me about anime, and I knew that like the other guys on my like in our group or something would have made. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have been. If someone makes fun of someone because they like anime or a certain TV show, I probably wouldn't be friends with them. But if, let's say, I'm like in a co-working space or like we're in a squad together or something, and I know the other guys would, I actually think it's kind of weak-willed to say, hey, don't talk about that because other people will make fun of you. That kind of seems like you're kind of like bending to the will of conformity. What I would probably do in that situation is, if I ever saw another person in my group, someone who's supposed to be like my comrade or like coworker, make fun of you for that, I would tell them to shut the fuck up. What would you say is the more masculine behavior in that case?
I would say there really isn't really there isn't really a masculine or an effeminate behavior there.
Well, let's actually real quick.
Personal opinion on that.
Real quick, just not to muddy the waters. I usually don't like the dichotomy of masculine and effeminate. I usually go for like masculine and boyish or like immature, because I don't actually think masculinity and femininity are opposites. I think they're actually very complementary and they overlap a lot. What ends up happening is people sort of think of like, oh, if this isn't like, if courage is a masculine trait, then cowardice is a female or feminine trait, which is kind of muddies the waters. So let's try to keep it with like masculine and like, immature or boyish.
All right. Wait. I don't think that there is a masculine or boyish aspect to that. What was the original thing again?
So I think there definitely is. So if I see someone like expressing something they like, and someone else giving them crap for it, I would say the masculine thing to do would to be like go to the person who's giving them crap and be like, hey, shut the fuck up. This person's just expressing something they're interested in. It feels very weak-willed to go up and say, hey man, you shouldn't do that because other people will make fun. It almost kind of sounds like you're kind of like bowing to conformity. It's like, well, no, everyone thinks this is nerdy.
Here's my take on that. So my take on that is it's none of his business. If somebody else is giving me shit,
what's none
he's
of whose
going
business?
out of his. It's none of the guy who told me. It's none of. It's not his business if somebody is bullying me, and he doesn't have to step in because he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. It's free fucking world.
He doesn't.
And also, not only that,
he doesn't have to. But like, wouldn't that be if you saw someone in a situation where like obviously, like if you were in a situation where you could defend yourself, that's one thing. But if I saw a situation where someone clearly was sort of like, they're more on the meek side, they're more sort of, there's someone who's kind of like more susceptible to sort of peer pressure. Would that not be masculine to defend that person, or not even defend the person, but just call out the other person for being a fucking asshole?
And here's my point on this one. This brings me to a talking point that I think I mentioned in the comments. Um, or I'm going to be building on that at least. And that is, I think that someone who is meek, more on the meeker side, someone who's more kind of withdrawn or shy, I think exposing them and having them fight on their own, fight their own battles, is going to be much better for them than somebody always stepping in and saying, "Hey, don't make fun of him. Hey, don't make fun of him. Hey, don't make fun of him." Every time that something comes up, he needs to learn how to fight his own battles and stand up for himself, which
Well,
I
I
did learn how to
and
stand up
I
for myself doing
and
this.
and I understand that, but the issue there is that you're kind of counting on that happening without any sort of positive interaction. So, like for example, I would feel the exact same way if I saw a situation where someone was being like bullied or like picked on. I I would probably like because this actually got brought up in the last talk where we were talking about that a situation like that, and I kind of relented. I was like, actually, no, that makes sense. That like I would probably step back and let that person see if they can handle it on their own. But if they can, if like they really are like just being like harassed or something, I would step in. However, after that, and
Actually, too, there comes a point.
I've done this with a number of people I know. That person who is meek, sometimes they again, this kind of goes back to your example of like talking about like encouraging someone to work out. Again, study after study has shown that this doesn't actually work. Of just kind of like leaving people to fend on their own. They might toughen up to some extent, but what actually ends up happening is they get very bitter and like angry. The difference there would be, hey, I would probably talk to that person and say, hey man, next time that guy like gives you shit, tell that person to fuck off. And that way that person is a bit more confident in their decision because they know they have someone backing them up if they need to. Not that they
And
need me, but it
here's
like in
this.
your world it kind of sounds like and again it kind of goes against your first point, which was like you were kind of framing the hazing as sort of having the person was trying to be magnanimous. But in this case, it's like even if the bullying isn't magnanimous, the person still should be left on their own because they'll grow a thick skin.
And here's where maybe I did a poor job explaining it in the comments, but um, part of the hazing that is usually goes on in these sorts of places, like I was telling you about the military and fraternities and jobs like mine, they'll they it's a bit of a push pull kind of thing. I don't know if you ever heard of that. You probably heard of that. There's a bit of push pull, and you kind of start out with a little bit of a little bit of bite, and then you give them a little bit of sugar. You give them a little bit of bite, give them a little bit of sugar, and then you start to kind of build a relationship with that person, and then they know, like for example, when I have somebody who's literally burning alive inside of a car, and fire hasn't shown up yet, they need to know that I'll be able to kind of stay emotionally here and I'm listening to them screaming and burning alive.
Wait,
They need to
hang
know
on.
that.
Oh, sorry, real quick. I completely am lost on this metaphor. Can you, if you could just wouldn't mind?
Okay, so they're it's necessary for them to. It's the same thing as military, like we were talking about earlier. Um,
So real quick, I just want to get
okay,
away from the military example because the military
okay, fine then.
example is like kind of what I was saying before. It is an extremely specialized and specific case study as to why these behaviors are done. Like this,
And that's
and
why
again,
it applies to me.
even the soldiers in that case know what the deal is. They know that the drill sergeant isn't just yelling at them because they're an asshole. They know that like, hey, he's like literally helping me in this case. They signed up for it. So that's why I don't really like to compare that. Like that's completely different than say like a schoolyard bully in the 10th grade. You would agree with that?
And I would agree with that completely. Yes,
Yeah.
schoolyard bully in 10th grade, he's just kind of being a dick,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
wait, hang on. How do you
But
know
even
that
then,
wait, how do you know that 10th grade bully isn't doing it to try and help out the weaker kid like he's trying to be magnanimous?
maybe he is. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know, man. But
that's sort of the issue is that when like the intention isn't known, it's like that's kind of the issue where I mean, we can always give these people the benefit of the doubt, but more often than not, and so, like someone in the chat mentioned, and this is actually my experience too. In my experience, a lot of the kids who like were like really badly bullied and like had no friends at all ended up becoming just kind of like really they became more withdrawn, they became depressed, or they became bullies themselves.
And that's
Usually,
highly unfortunate.
wait, what?
I said this very unfortunate that happened.
Yeah, and also, I kind of, I also I don't want to say disingenuous, but it also kind of bugs me when I hear this sort of argument because when we talk about like misfortune building character, that is 100% the truth. Like we have to face hardships in order to sort of like build confidence and stuff.
Yeah.
The issue is that it kind of sound like life is full of hardships and misfortunes and like adversity that everyone kind of goes through no matter what, and that's sort of, and how they respond to it is what build character. Like life will test you on their own, so it sort of seems weird to say that like, and again if we're not going, I mean like barring situations where like the intention of the person doing it is known, it seems weird to sort of like justify bullying or harassment by saying, oh yeah, no, it's okay because that'll help them build character because it's giving them a hardship that they can learn to overcome.
And here's where, like I was saying earlier, we get a lot of new guys that are literally straight out of high school, and we they don't have any life experience. They don't know any adversity because they've just been in high school and that's it. They've never had to pay rent. They've never had to give up meals just because they're fucking poor or whatever, like a lot of people have in life, myself included. I mean, we've all been there. Um, and I need to know that this person is going to be confident enough that when the shit hits the fan, again, this is pertaining to me mostly, because again, I'm only, talking about my own experience because that's all I can talk about.
Yeah, but
Is
again,
my own experience.
the problem I'm having here is that like we're talking about a situation where it's like, again, it's sort of like, I mean, like same, like not like they're comparing the two exactly, but like being an EMT or being an emergency room person or being a cop or something. These are sort of like situations where like these people need to be like mentally sound enough to handle these incredibly extreme situations, and this is part of the process of kind of like just kind of like kind of like just like bolstering, just like playful hazing. But the issue there is that we're running into the same problem of like there is sort of like this implication that there is a magnanimous or sort of a utilitous, or like there is a utility behind it. And usually, like, so for example, in the example you used, like, hey, what's up, fat fuck? You're looking a little chunky. And it's like, yeah, I've been down. It's like, oh, it's gay. Let's go work out. So in that case, again, I don't really think it's necessary, but at the very least, at the end, you're showing that you actually still care about this person and that you're motivating them to do something productive. That is completely different than just saying, hey, what's up, you fat fuck, and then just walking away. You would agree?
I agree completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Again, it's
that's
kind of
sort
funny looking at it, but
yeah, so that's sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about bullying. Like light
okay.
hazing or like, fucking around with friends. That's different than when we usually talk about bullying, which is usually someone like maliciously putting someone else down to like just make themselves feel better. Like they're like, the schoolyard bully usually isn't doing it to like I'm helping these kids, like they're usually not doing it for that.
I agree.
And we don't want to. And again, I think like given most people in certain social interactions who have like a decent amount of social calibration, they can kind of tell the difference between someone like giving them like a gentle ribbing and like someone who is being maliciously targeting them. So I think we've differentiated that. I don't want to spend too much time on it.
That's fine.
But so here's my issue, because we kind of got here based on the reject modernity, embrace masculinity videos, in which the beginnings of the videos will be like reject modernity or like reject degeneracy, and they'll show a dude in a dress or an LGBTQ pride parade or a fat person. Do you think that these fall under that definition of like magnanimous gentle ribbing or like playfulness, or do you think they fall more under the like we don't like this, we're bullying you in a sense?
I think that because I hang around a lot of circles that are, I guess, would have the same views as those videos, um, where um, I think that what they're doing is and this is me trying to read minds, which is obviously impossible, but you get what I'm saying. Anyways, um, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to say this is bad and this is good. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
They're
so
saying
so perfect. So what
overeating is
is
bad.
okay, so what is and like I don't disagree with that. I think like the ones where it's like Nikocado avocado, they're fine. Like it's like, binge eating is not good. He just recently had a heart attack on live stream. It was very disturbing.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
He's disgusting.
Yeah, so I think like saying some again, it doesn't really I don't really think it tracks like but again, well so here there's two issues with this. One is that in this case, the it it's not as if like the examples we were talking about before, the the hazing was directed directly at the person for supposedly
Mhm.
their own benefit. In this case, it's not as if someone is like sending these videos to Nikocado Avocado to try and help him. They're just kind of saying, haha, fat, haha, this is gross. So it kind of defeats the entire. So, like,
I agree.
just based off of how you phrased it, it kind of defeats the entire purpose of like, it's not
I
for.
don't.
It's
I
not
don't
like
think it's.
it's not like the
I
people
don't think
making
it's.
it are for like they're not doing it for Nikocado Avocado's like
I
for
agree.
his like benefit.
I agree. I think they're just simply making a statement, and honestly, what seems like to me is a lot of it's kind of a counterculture these days to kind of uh, be against that kind of stuff because it's being so accepted or kind of pushed to be accepted, whether it is or not. And
Yeah.
I
So
think that
so just to
it's
just
mostly just a statement of we don't like this, and this is
yeah.
not good, and we think this is bad.
Okay. So you would agree that most of the videos then with that fine are just straight up homophobic and transphobic.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. 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 Then we don't really disagree.
But
Okay.
but but also I'm not exactly, for the LGBT community. Again, I don't hate anybody specifically. I don't think that they're bad people. I think that the community in general and um all that kind of stuff is just mostly unhealthy, which is I know is not really part of our discussion, which I'm fine with discussing with you if you want, but
Yeah. So
um
what? So what would
I
you?
don't really agree with it.
So what would you presume would be unhealthy about the LGBT community? I guess.
Well, there's a lot of stuff about that. It is physically unhealthy. Uh,
Uh,
you're
hang on. Sorry, just so we don't backtrack. So like, physically
okay.
unhealthy in what way?
So the rates of STDs and here, I pulled up some notes because I knew this was gonna come up. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and just go ahead and get some of this out the way and get it so it's all consolidated. Um, so let's start with, and I have all the studies. If you want me to send them to you, I can. Um, so there's a lot of anal cancer, very much more anal cancer in in the gay community.
Well, well,
Lots
hang
of
on.
AIDS and HIV.
Well, the anal that I mean that makes sense given that I
Yeah.
assume that most homosexual men would. I mean you're talking about men. I assume not women.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And STD rate is also high in women as well, but
Well,
for
the
men, that's the anal cancer part.
well the point I'm making is like I mean most I assume on average most gay men would probably partake in anal sex more than straight or heterosexual
Yes.
couples. So yeah, that's just wanted to
Yes.
clear that up.
Yes. And this is all for this is specifically studies done on the LGBT community or in comparison from the heterosexual community to the homosexual community. See what I'm saying?
Are those
Um,
studies correlated? Or are those studies sort of like controlled for heterosexual people who have the same level of promiscuity, or the heterosexual population in general?
To be honest, I haven't read them line by line. I mostly look at the abstract and the statistics that are in them. So I'm
Okay,
full
so
stop. I'm not reading these line by line because you have to buy them.
yeah,
Um,
I just want to just to clarify, just in case anyone was wondering what that was in reference to. So the issue there is that, so for example, um, let's say that like on average, the STD rate is higher in the heterosexual community than it is in the homosexual community. Well, the issue there is that if we have, especially like in this country, are you in the United States?
yes.
So, at least in the United States, there is still a very strict religious sort of like what's what I'm looking for, tendency for a lot of areas, in which things like casual sex or premarital sex are very much frowned upon. Sort of in a sense, not necessarily enforced monogamy, but sort of like a frowning upon a lot of these behaviors. So in that case, it really isn't a matter of like the gay and heterosexual community. It's just between people who are more promiscuous and people who are less promiscuous.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, like
And
if we're actually trying to make like a determinant, like of course, the more people you sleep with, the more chances you'll probably get of getting an STI. I mean, also, does that STI
mhm,
list also involve something like as menial as say like the HPV, which like 97% of people have?
mhm.
Yeah, so
Um, yeah,
I'm not
and
I'm not
again,
saying I'm not like trying to draw like I'm not saying this study is like wrong or like the people doing it are evil. I'm just like there's a lot of sort of like nuances in these that I just kind of wanted to discuss.
I agree, and I agree, and I fully accept that, and I understand. But again, I'm just putting forth what I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no worries.
Um, uh, Also, the sexual and physical abuse in same-sex relationships is much higher. I can pull that up.
So I completely agree that is 100% fact. What does that have to do with
Hmm.
the LGBTQ movement?
Uh, and here, I'll just jump straight to the point, which is a lot of times the mental health issues are much higher, and that's not a dig on them because they can't help that. It's usually comes down to trauma and usually sexual molestation from when they were children, which again is not their fault at all. They cannot control that. However, my problem with this is that the gay community, or sorry, not just the gay community, the LGBT community, um, is very much pushed on the, I guess, society, I guess, with all the pride parades, with all the drag queen story hours, with all of the, I think they had a gay pride parade on Blue's Clues. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Based.
and if and you can't speak out about any of this, if I posted any of this on Facebook, I can guarantee I'll probably be banned,
Well,
or Reddit or
what are
wherever.
you, what is your, it's not just like if you post it, like I'm sure it's like if I just posted like, hey, Pride Parade happening in Chicago, people would be like, oh, cool. I assume it's also coming with some sort of commentary on your part, no?
What do you mean by that?
Like if I said like, "Hey, there's a Pride Parade in Chicago," it'd probably be like, "Oh, cool, awesome, yeah."
Oh, no, no.
If I said
I'm
that
saying
like,
like
"Hey,
if I posted.
pride, hey, if there's a Pride Parade in Chicago, the gays are infecting our children," that'd probably get a lot more negative response. No.
Yeah, and no, I'm saying if I posted these statistics or anything like that, or if I posted that, hey, maybe we should start treating trans people instead of giving into their delusions,
Well, we do. Well, we do
that would be
treat.
different.
Well, we do treat trans
Uh,
people. That's what sexual reassignment surgery is. But here, let's just turn back the clock real quick, just to kind of tackle these. So, your point about domestic violence happening more often in heterosexual couples, that is 100% true, and that makes 100% sense given to like our society. In our society, I mean, like domestic abuse is seen as a bad, but domestic abuse from a man to a woman is seen as like uber bad. Like that is seen as like the worst fucking shit ever. Um, to the extent where like there are many cases where men will be like, if you actually look at the domestic abuse rates within heterosexual like relationships, it's about
No,
50.
that's a homosexual relationships.
No. I'm saying like, but I'm like making a point for heterosexual relationships. If you look in them, the amount of like physical damage is much higher on the woman's side. However, if you actually look at like in heterosexual relationships between like who suffers domestic violence of any kind, it's actually split down the middle between men and women. One of the big things is, but the difference is like if I punch my girlfriend and give her a black eye, that's going to take a lot more notice. If my girlfriend like slaps me in the head every day when she gets home from work, that can have a severe mental toll on me, but it might not raise any alarm bells. So just to kind of reiterate this point, the reason I'm making it is that it's a lot due to societal like sort of like attitudes. It's a lot more unlikely that I would probably like raise my hand to my girlfriend, and even her to me, because obviously she's not going to raise her hand to a guy who is like who's got like 50 pounds on her, or 100 pounds on her actually. There's sort of like a very noticeable size gap there. Whereas when it comes to homosexual relationships, it's not necessarily, they're not like, this is like the distinction I want to make. It's not that gay people are like inherently more likely to beat up each other. It's more just because if you're in a relationship with a same-sex partner, that sort of social taboo of particularly like a man hitting a woman isn't present. So you're more likely to, a quarrel is more likely to sort of like extrapolate into a violent conflict or just sort of some sort of abuse.
And where I disagree with that, the gay couples that I'm personally friends with, and they don't see it as that, and most couples that I see in general don't see it as that. Maybe that's just how you look at it personally, but the couples that I've talked to, just in passing, they have told me that it's more of like, I don't want to hurt the person that I love, more than, she's smaller than me or he's bigger than me. I don't want to do that.
Do you know
it's more of, hey, this is coming from a place of, I don't want to hit the person that I love. You know what I mean?
Do you know what selection bias is?
I think I've heard about it before. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I go to like if I'm trying to like get a reading on like, is it men or women who cause divorces more, and I go to like an annual meeting of My Husband Was a Piece of Shit club that's attended by women, and I ask them, I'm probably going to get a lot more biased readings towards the husband being the asshole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the issue I have with that is that I am simply interpreting the statistics that you have provided. Like, you have provided statistics saying that domestic violence is more prevalent in homosexual relationships, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
However, I offered a very, like, based on all our other societal like tendencies and habits, that makes a lot more sense. It's very it's something to say like, like, hey, black people commit more violent crime than white people. It's like, well, yeah, given like the statistics, given like the environment of our society, that makes perfect sense. But it has nothing to do with like inherent behaviors. The reason I'm bringing this up is because what you're doing is you're using anecdotal evidence to support wide statistical claims that I can't really verify. Like I also have many gay friends and know many gay couples who would never lay a hand on each other. So this idea that like it kind of like, from what you're saying, it almost kind of sounds like you're implying that gay couples inherently have less loving attitudes toward each other than heterosexual couples.
No.
Well, isn't that kind of what you said about like the couples you said, like, I don't want to hurt the person I love. So if homosexual couples commit domestic violence against each other more often, that means that their love for each other is not as strong as that of heterosexuals.
I think that comes down to them having more mental health issues, which are largely unaddressed.
So why would you say? What would some of the reasons be, do you think, for the mental health issues being found more in the LGBTQ community?
Well, I have plenty of links here that show that is fact.
No, but I'm saying, what are the reasons? Again, I can say that
Probably
like
because
again, I can say that like black people commit more crime than white people. It's the reason why that is the determining factor. That's like the whole kit and
okay,
caboodle. That's why I'm asking. So
well,
like, so why do you
the
think? Or
why
yeah, go ahead.
the why is because I think that a lot of being like a lot of gay people and trans people both, or LGBT in general, they have a lot of childhood trauma, which is what I believe is what why they are gay is or lesbian or trans. Excuse
So
me.
you think
I think
homosexual?
that is why.
So you think homosexuality and transgenderism comes from childhood trauma?
Yes.
Okay.
For the majority, I know that there are outliers and
Are
there are
there
studies shown for that, but the
are there any studies
maybe
showing a correlation between these two things?
so here is all I have. All I have really on this one is uh the correlation, not the causation. However,
Okay.
I wasn't
So
able to find anything on the opposite side either. So
okay.
I was just
Okay.
kind of like,
Well,
well, I don't
hang
know.
on. Well, hang on real quick. Okay. So that's kind of
Okay.
why I asked. Correlation does not
Mhm.
equal causation, of course.
And I
And
agree.
and this is kind of it. Kind of sounded like it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it kind of sound right there. You kind of made an argument. It's like, well, I can't prove it, but you can't disprove it. If that's in
Mm,
any sort of like scientific field, if that is ever the case, the consensus in that case would be that it's there's a negative causation there. Like so for
no,
example,
what I'm trying
I
to.
can't
Okay, go ahead.
prove that like homosexuality is caused by trace levels of radiation in like it just like around the country of the United States. I can't prove it, but seeing as people can't disprove it, we should kind of consider it. Like, no, any reputable scientist would say, like, for lack of a better word, like, shut the fuck up. Like, what are we even talking about?
Wouldn't that be? I was, I was gonna say, would that be bullying? I'm just fucking around. I'm just fucking around. Um, uh, but what I was trying to get with that is I don't think that people know yet. There hasn't really been a consensus on it yet because it's kind of mixed. Some psychologists are saying that it's because of this. Some psychologists are saying that they were born gay.
Well,
So those are the main two camps that
well,
I've run
hang on.
into and that I've seen.
Yeah, but hang on. No, but the entire point, the fact that there are gay people who like did not go through trauma and ended up being gay or transgender, that kind of throws a massive wrench in this. The issue there is that we have to look at the also another good point is you actually have to look at the time in which the trauma takes place. So, for example, a lot of that it's very much true that a lot of gay people and trans people probably suffered from childhood trauma before as children more so than heterosexual people. That also might largely be a consequence of the fact that they're gay or trans. So if a kid is like 11 and starts like, hey, that boy looks cute, and their dad like smacks him across the face like, hey, don't be a gay, yeah, that's childhood trauma. Like of course it would be. Or
Yeah.
if like their parents completely if like a kid like is maybe like 12 or 13 and they're like, hey, I think maybe I like girls, or like a girl of course, like, hey, maybe I'm gay, and their parents completely neglect them and they call them like an abomination, or they think that it's disgusting or want them to stop talking about it, that is I mean that's pretty clearly trauma. So there's sort of like this, not only is there a correlation, not only is correlation not causation, but also there are many other factors that may be related to this, having to do with the fact that our nation, for the most part, not I mean like for the most part, just all around, but especially in many sort of like rural, less progressive areas, is highly prejudicial against gay people still, even to this day.
And so this is not me trying to convince you per se that I'm correct. This is just me saying that I am comfortable personally making these inferences based off of my own anecdotal evidence from
Which
friends that I have talked to, and also these things that I have seen. Again, I'm not trying to convince you of this. Really, what we were originally arguing about was weak men and hazing, etc. And uh, while this was part of it, but either way, for the reason why people become gay, I am comfortable personally making that inference, based off of studies and my own anecdotal evidence of talking to gay friends, etc.
One
But you
more,
can take that or leave it.
just a single question, and we can move on to the next point.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll get on. If I grew up in a really bad neighborhood and I was surrounded
Hmm.
predominantly by black people, and I saw
Hmm.
a lot of those black people commit crimes and be rude and like be very
Hmm.
aggressive and attack me, do you think it would be reasonable for me to grow up and believe that black people are inherently more primal or less, what's the word I'm looking for, civilized than white people as an inherent trait?
There were less what now?
Less civilized, more.
I
Uh,
think that'd be perfectly, especially as a kid. Like that's just what you see. What you see is what you know.
Sure, but being part of an adult is not using your own personal experiences to dictate reality.
Say that again. Sorry.
But part of being an adult is realizing that you can't rely on your own individual, limited personal experience to demonstrate larger trends against people in society. I mean, if that was the case, I could say that all men are fucking, like, my father was not present in my life. He and my mother divorced when I was 11. Um, like, I could then say, it's like, well, all men are just like they always walk out on their children. They don't care about their children. But of course, you would agree that that would be pretty ridiculous for me to say.
Yes, because I mean, maybe I don't want to, put words in your mouth, but I'm sure that you've seen plenty of things that say otherwise.
Well, I've seen
Plenty of
statistics.
couples that haven't. Right.
I've seen
Which are the
scientific
statistics?
studies and statistics.
And that's fine.
Yeah,
And my thing is, I see this statistic, and I can make inferences using that statistic, and also
based
my
on
own personal inferences and
AK,
my own anecdotal evidence.
AKA confirmation/selection bias.
Sure, fine.
Okay,
Call it what
just
you want. That's just
no
that's just
worries.
what my viewpoint is.
No worries. We're good. I
Um,
just wanted to confirm that.
and I
So,
haven't seen anything, and I've looked for other things that say otherwise, and there is no thing that says otherwise. So I'm like,
yeah. Well,
this
I
is,
can't.
this is all I really got.
I mean, I don't have any proof that there aren't aliens butt fucking in the like dark side of Pluto right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume and not just assume it because I don't have any evidence that doesn't prove that.
I'm saying there's no evidence that points to anything else, is what I'm saying. That
well, I
not that
mean,
I've seen at
well,
least.
then the answer would be that just some people are born gay or trans, which is the widely accepted in the scientific community.
But what's the gene? What's the gene what is the gay gene
that
that they
we
always talk
don't.
about?
I don't think we really talk about it. That's not really how it works.
Why not? I mean, it has to come from somewhere, right?
Well, yeah, but not every like behavior is demonstrated strictly by genes. It's not like you have like one particular gene and that means you're going
So
to result in being gay or trans or
so
something.
is it were they born that way, or is it a what's the word? Is it kind of a learned behavior, or what's the word? I'm trying to think of it. It's like nature versus nurture. Is
Well,
it
if it
nature or
was
is it nurture?
well, if it was a learned behavior, then basically no one would be gay. Like because we live in a aggressively heterosexual society, like across the board. Depictions in media, you walk outside.
Depending
The,
on where you live, I guess.
well, yeah, but like even in like Bible Belt areas where they're like everyone is paired off and like everyone thinks gay is a sin, people still end up being gay.
And I live in the Bible Belt, and I can tell you for sure, like there's plenty of gay people here, and they're pretty open about it these days.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's good, and that's
and
why more people.
it's not really looked down upon anymore.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, let's not.
where I live at least, again, where I live
Yeah,
at least.
let's.
Okay.
We need to talk about
Let
larger.
me let
I
me let
mean,
me let me say that.
yeah, I mean, like just look at some of the bills that are currently in Congress right now. I think that's a bit of a overreach. But anyways, let's get back to sort of like weak men, strong men. So we kind of hit a wall somewhere where, and that's kind of when I asked you to come on. We were talking about weak men, strong men, and like the whole reject modernity thing. So
Yeah.
your argument was that the weak the men who were being mocked in these videos, like the guys who like skirts, or maybe you're part of the LGBT community, or maybe they paint their nails or something, wear makeup. These men, even if the attacks that are coming at them from these videos are malicious, if they were truly strong men, it wouldn't bother them, and they should just like hand wave it and move on. That was kind of what you said.
Well, that was a point that I made, but
Yeah, hang on.
I think that
real quick, hang on. I think I have. With how society and global politics are going, there are much worse things than insults coming their way, and they're going to be in for
yes,
a world of hurt. Do you think the type of men that fought in
yes.
Normandy would worry about someone calling a fatty or nerd? Yeah. Okay, so is your... I guess the issue I have with that is you're kind of implying it's like, well, if someone is hurling abuse at someone, and again, it kind of goes back to the original issue where instead of calling out the person hurling the abuse, it's almost like you're calling out the person who's being offended by the abuse by saying, hey, you should toughen up.
What I'm saying is, there are always going to be mean people that say mean things. So it would behoove you to become tougher. And I am telling the person, hey, you need to toughen up because, again, we can tell people to be nice, all we want, but there's always going to be somebody that's going to be like, you're a dumbass, you're a nerd, you're weird, you stink, you're smelly, whatever,
Sure,
there's
but
always going to be someone who's going to say something mean to you, and I think that it would behoove everybody to say, okay, and I don't care about your opinion, and then move on.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same token, the fact that they're always going to be, say, like, I don't know, like racist people in society doesn't mean that if someone is hurling the N-word at a black person, are you saying that no one should say anything and be like, hey, bro, you should stop that because that's cringe?
Well, I think that you should eat. So here's my thing.
The point I'm making is like, just to give reference, most gay people or black people, especially gay people, they've probably been called every name under the sun throughout their life, and
exactly.
that gay person's probably a lot stronger and has been through a lot more abuse, like just in general when it comes to that. So they probably have gotten used to it. The point I am making is that I don't think that they should have to get used to it. Like I said, every person goes through hardship in their life. They get faced with adversity and they have to bolster. That's just a fact of life. You're going to suffer hardship. You're going to suffer rejection. And yeah, those are experiences that you'll have to go through, and you will sort of like bolster yourself. And that's good. That's a part of growing up. The problem is like when there just seems to be like an unneeded amount of malicious attacking of these people on top of that like the way you're kind of framing it is if like, well, if gay people don't get bullied for being gay, then they might grow up as soft little buttercups because, they'll face no adversity in their life, which I would
think
argue,
anybody that grows up like that is going to grow up to be a soft buttercup, man. Like,
yeah, but
that's
but
just
I don't
the reality of life.
But I don't know many people who have ever grown up with no adversity or rejection in their life. I mean, I'm sure there are some
met
people.
Plenty, man.
Yeah, but like we're talking about like general trends. I'm sure there are like some but also has to sort of like do with like an element of privilege, whether it's income or what have you. So just kind of just framing it as like, if like, so for example, if a gay kid grows up in a really poor neighborhood and is like had to struggle and fight and deal with all this crap in their life, that person's probably going to be very bolstered. They're probably going to be able to face hardship. That person's been through a lot. If I'm at the store with that person and someone calls them the S slur, it just seems like, hey man, like I'm not like, oh no, it's, and well, again, like that person's not doing it for like magnanimous reasons, but in any case, it just seems like a needless cruelty towards a person who has been through more hardship than you could ever imagine.
And if they're more bolstered and they don't care, then what does it matter? I mean, honestly, what you're gonna have a lot better time is if you just ignore the person, because what they're trying to do is either they're trying to hurt they're trying to hurt the other person, or they're trying to get a rise out of somebody.
But again, we have
like
to,
a troll would.
But again, we have to be able. We can't just ignore these sort of attitudes. We have to call them out when we see them. No.
Why not? Or
Well,
I mean,
how would
if
how
the
would
gay
we have
person that's been
ever?
through all that stuff
How would we have
is
ever?
bolstered,
How would we have ever like gotten things like the civil rights bill if everyone just sat on their ass and uh, didn't rebel against injustice and cruelty? Do you
what do you
think
mean?
black people in the '60s should have just like toughened up from all the racist abuse they got and just dealt with it?
I feel like that's kind of comparing apples to oranges. Just saying,
I really don't think it
you're
is.
being gay. I don't like. It's different than saying someone's gay and or fat is way different than you literally cannot eat here. You literally cannot vote. That's
So,
way different.
so currently, I'm not sure if you're where you live. Currently, there are multiple bills being passed in Congress and the Senate, or like being argued over, that are putting gay people or trans people's safety at risk, their mental health,
Like
what
how
have you.
what are those bills? I'm not saying they aren't. I'm just asking. I've never heard of these. What are those bills? If
Well,
you don't mind me asking.
well, with many of the bills, like there are many that sort of just deny health coverage for people who are like for trans people, like HRT or puberty blockers or what have you. Which these are things that have been like kind of going back to our original point about like we need to treat trans people. It's like we do. That's what puberty blockers and HRT and maybe eventually sexual reassignment surgery are. Those are the
So
treatments.
let's start with puberty blockers. Um, I have here again. I can send it if you want me to. 88% of children that have transsexual or gender identity disorder, or whatever you want to call it, that have that
Mhm.
have within 13 years have resolved that and do not have it anymore. And also another part with the gender reassignment surgery. Um, Actually, it has been shown that they are more suicidal after gender reassignment surgery than before. And again, these are
So
studies. This isn't Washington Post posting something. This is actual.
so
Um,
again, you're kind of relying on a lot of sort of like there's a difference between like reading statistics and interpreting statistics. So you are correct that the vast majority of people who get on puberty blockers end up like resolving it and like not moving on to HRT. That is the
no,
entire
I'm saying without puberty blockers.
wait. So like someone who says they're like, oh, I might be transgender, and they don't get on puberty blockers, and then they end up not
Correct.
being transgender.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that even hurts your point more. So in that case, it would
I don't see how.
assume. Well, no, it does because that would presume that the vast majority of children who maybe go to like a psychiatrist and say, "Hey, I think I might be transgender," instead of just putting them on puberty blockers immediately, the doctors and psychiatrists are like, "Hey, let's actually see and like talk this out and see if you actually maybe are transgender, and then if you are, we can move on to the next step." So what you're saying is that it seems like the threshold for a kid to be put on puberty blockers is actually quite high. They actually have to get, and this is true, they actually have to get, like a lot of people sort of like believe that like a kid like who's like 13 can like go to the doctor and like, hey, can you cut my dick off? And they're like, yeah, sure, hop on. Like that's not how it works. Like just to get on puberty
I'm aware.
blockers. Wait, what?
I
Oh
said
yeah,
I'm aware.
you're right. Yeah, so just to get put on puberty blockers, you have to get a lot of sign off by a lot of like I think you have to go to like 3 or 4 different like specialists before you can even get to sign up for puberty blockers. So it kind of hurts your point because that's sort of insinuating that these people who agree that gender dysphoria is a real thing or transgenderism is a real thing understand the importance and severity of it, and thus they are very, very careful about prescribing puberty blockers to kids and only do so in cases where the evidence of them being transgender or having dysphoria is very, very confirmed.
And I think that they should be giving puberty blockers in general.
What are
I don't agree with that.
in the case of the kids who actually do get put on puberty blockers, and these are kids who
Yeah.
don't go on to do HRT, which is an even smaller percentage. What are the long-term detrimental side effects of those puberty blockers?
To be honest, I don't know. I haven't looked into it.
So real quick, I find it very concerning that you seem to be very against puberty blockers, but you have not looked into the like Like if I was like looking into like whether or not I'm okay with like a certain medicine, the first thing I would do is like, hey, does it cause any harm? So all in all, for the most part, the entire point
Is
of
it?
wait, go ahead.
Let me ask this question: Are puberty blockers reversible?
Yes.
So they are.
Okay. It again. I'm. I don't mean to be like condescending here. It seems really. I'm a little bit because like I'm trying to be good faith, but like the fact that like you're like really against them, but like it seems like you have no knowledge on them is very concerning. But just to answer your
That's
question,
fine.
yeah, just to answer
That's
your
fine.
question, how puberty blockers work is they delay your puberty, and then so let's say a kid goes on them at like 13, but then at 16 they're like, hey, actually, I've been feeling different. I don't think I want to do this anymore. They go off them. Puberty hits them like a fucking Mack truck, and then they're fine. Like puberty will like
I'm
hit
sure
like
that's good for them.
rapidly. Like they'll probably like get like a shit ton of zits and like they'll grow hair everywhere. It'll happen very quickly, but they're fine. The entire point of puberty blockers is so if it gets to the point like where they've gone long enough and they're like, hey, actually, I believe I am trans and this is the best thing for me going on HRT. That makes the process of doing so a lot less detrimental to them. Because you can imagine if like someone is like halfway through puberty and then they go on HRT or like another hormone, that will lead to even more complications. So puberty blockers are actually like they're very safe. They're like the whole point of them. Because if consider like if that wasn't the case, then they just wouldn't put them on puberty blockers, and then if it got to that point, they would just give them HRT. But they don't do that. The whole reason doctors do it is to say it's like, hey, this is just in case, so it'll actually lead to no detrimental effects down the line.
And I'll explain why I don't know about them because and I've been trying not to bring this up because I know that it's a sort of a catch-all and kind of an easy cop-out. Um, um, but for this instance, the reason why I don't really look into it because I don't care because it is against my religion. And this whole thing is against my religion, but I've been trying to go with things that I can actually show you other than, oh, well, that's against my religion because that really gets us nowhere.
Yeah,
Um,
well, the thing
uh,
is with that is like obviously like no offense, I do not care about your religious beliefs in terms of like
exactly, and that's
giving,
why I
yeah,
haven't been bringing it
and
up.
yeah, but all I'm saying is that it's, I mean, the issue with that is like it's sort of, I guess my contention is like, okay, well, if that's the case, then why did you even bother to bring up studies? Like it could be
Because
like,
I'm trying to stay away from that because I want to give you, you said you wanted to have me on, have a
yeah,
discussion about things,
but the
and I'll
problem,
bring up the studies instead of bringing up my religion because these are something that you can more likely relate to. Because I'm assuming
but
maybe again maybe I shouldn't assume, but
the
I would
problem,
imagine you're not religious, right?
well, the problem there is the fact that like, I mean, there are plenty of non-religious people who also believe all the things you believe because they aren't able to properly interpret statistics or they just have certain biases or whatnot.
Yeah.
And like okay, I'll talk to those people and we'll clear things up. But in your case, I guess my issue is that it doesn't like we couldn't. I mean, the problem is like it's not even. You're kind of because like at the end of the day, you're basically saying it doesn't matter if all the evidence of like puberty blockers HRT was like 100% positive for trans kids. I still don't agree with it, and we still shouldn't do it.
And that's fine. You can not like that, but that's
I
just
don't
the
know, but
reality
no,
of
no,
it right now, man.
but I'm saying that's what you're saying. Even if all the evidence around uh, HRT and it was 100% like, hey,
I will,
kids who got on HRT, we have 100% positive results. You would still be not okay with it.
and here's my thing. When I verify, which I'm going to take your word at it right now because I feel like you are in good faith and you're not going to lie to me or anything like that, and I believe you. But when you saying that it is reversible has made me
Well,
calm down a
nothing.
bit and be like, okay,
Nothing's really.
it's
Well, real quick, the thing about like
okay.
reversible, just to understand about puberty blockers, nothing's really happening. Like it's not as if like you go
Well,
on
the
puberty
inaction
blockers.
happening then.
Well, yeah, but like
It,
it's not as if like it's not like HRT, like that's something different where it's like, hey, you're having this
I
hormone put in
gotcha.
you. Yeah. But that,
I
again, the
understand. It
entire,
was I just misspoke. That's all.
yeah, no worries. But the
Again,
entire point of puberty blockers
semantics.
is to delay it to actually prevent harm from being done. Now, just to confirm, I'm someone who, obviously, I have my biases, but I'm someone
Yeah.
who isn't like sort of like who isn't tied to that indefinitely. Like, so for example, as someone who was I don't know, I say athlete, like I ran track and cross country and shit in high school. I lift and box today. I am fully aware of the complications that would arise from a transgender man, even after undergoing like full gender reassignment surgery, competing in. Oh no, sorry, a trans woman competing in biological cis woman sports. I am not. I have not made up my mind about that. I am looking through a lot of evidence right now. I am not really for it. Not because I don't believe that
Hmm.
trans women shouldn't be able to compete, but because there
I
are
agree completely.
certain like very, very large biological factors that do make a very large difference. And that's only for certain sports though. Like I don't like trans women in like badminton, like who gives a shit? MMA or wrestling, that's a whole different thing. And but
I
these
agree
are
completely.
but these are conversations that are also, it's not like the LGBT community is a monolith. Like these conversations are going on in the community to try to figure out how to do this. And the science, we really don't have that much, many case studies on it. We only, like for example, the Olympics, they have been allowing trans athletes since like 2004, the last like almost like over 15 years. And yet whenever you hear detractors of it, you hear like this one case of like this happening, or one or two cases, which I agree, like in those cases we should pay attention. But it kind of like gets folded into like this fear mongering of like trans women are going to destroy cis women sports and like stuff like that, which just once it kind of gets to that fear mongering point, it kind of is hard to take. It's hard to engage in good faith.
All right, and here I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is your stance on the whole bathroom situation?
Uh,
So and to clarify, I guess, uh, trans women going into uh women's bathrooms and trans men going into men's bathrooms.
tear down the male and female signs, make every single bathroom gender neutral.
Really?
And from now on, just start making every bathroom gender neutral. There are plenty of places with only gender neutral bathrooms. There is absolutely no real reason why.
What about the places that have multiple stalls and all that kind of stuff? You see what I'm saying?
Wait, what?
Like the places with multiple stalls and there's more than one toilet in there. You see what I'm saying? Like those bigger bathrooms, like you see at like a
Yeah,
really big restaurant or something like that.
yeah. Well, it's not like guys are like shitting next to each other without stall. Like there are still stalls in men's bathrooms.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't really see the point of. I think the entire like splitting up bathrooms based on your it doesn't make any sense to me. It actually just it seems like it costs a lot of money and wastes a lot of space to do so when you can just, hey, why don't we just make them gender neutral bathrooms? There are stalls, and yeah, there's always going to be stalls. So like, hey, if you're a guy and you don't feel comfortable like pissing in front of a chick or something, just go into the stall.
All right. Shit. All right.
Yeah, I mean like one of the main reasons this is kind of goes back to the fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
One of the really the only argument against well, there's two big arguments against the whole bathroom issue. One is that cis women might feel uncomfortable being in a bathroom with, say, like a trans woman if they have like a penis or something, or
Yeah.
if they don't seem like they pass. My reaction to them is like, get over it, which is like you can probably like no, like seriously, I'm sure there are a lot of like turfs who would like be at my throat like, what did you say? Like, get over it. You're adults. Like, just get over it. If you're feeling comfortable with it, go into the stall, or just like wait till you get home. That's kind of how I
Couldn't
am
that be
with
said about the other side as well?
what.
Couldn't the trans person just get over it and just go to the men's bathroom or women's bathroom, whichever one?
Well, that's why I am a gender neutral bathroom. That I think that the entire point is that I think separating them at all is fucking stupid and doesn't really have any social utility and only leads to bad outcomes. Like, so for example, what would be the bad side of, like, there are plenty, like there are plenty of colleges that have like gender neutral bathrooms, like with showers and stalls and everything. So it's clearly not a problem that is like inherent or something. So I guess my question would be, what is the utility of having separate male and female bathrooms?
No, there isn't really a utility. It's just mostly
That's
comes down to I don't feel comfortable.
that's kind of my, and usually I think that uncomfortableness is because it's sort of like a learned behavior. Like there's been, like, again, like there are plenty of places or like institutions or areas that have co-ed bathrooms, and the people after it might be like the first time you do it you're like, ugh, but then like you just get used to it. Same, it's the same. It's like going to it's like akin to like going to like a girl boy party. Or like, oh, there gotta be girls there, and then like you do it and you get over it. It seems like that there is no social utility in separating them, but there is a great social utility in just getting rid of it altogether and making them gender neutral. So that is my argument. I want to touch on real quick about your another statement you made about
Okay.
gender reassignment surgery and how it actually does not lower suicide rates. This is 100% the truth. However, there are many reasons for this, and they also are related. Well, first of all, the number of people who have who undergo gender reassignment surgery who are trans, I think it's something like 2%. It's something like insanely small. Not just because there are many trans people who are able to sort of like live their lives comfortably without doing so, but also because of the exorbitant expenses of doing so, but also just like the physical toll of just like, you know, these are major surgeries, and the recovery time.
Yeah, and the surgeries are not. I don't think the surgeries are where they should be yet.
Yeah. Well, like the evidence of it is just to confirm, confirm. Studies have shown that those who undergo sexual reassignment surgery, and again, this is after consider probably like in most cases like almost a decade of seeing physicians and psychiatrists and getting like professional opinions on what is the best case. So in this case, the people who undergo the surgery are probably in such distress that it is like, for lack of a better word, it has come to this. Like, that's not a good phrase, but like it's gotten to such an extent, like you're struggling so much that this is like the best option, even with all its risks. So in that case, it isn't surprising that some people might still, you know, end up having, you know, struggle afterwards. The difference is like the difference. The issue there is like, if there was strong evidence that showing after surgery there was a drastic rise in suicides, that would be one thing. That would be a case of like, oh, okay, hang on, there's clearly like a very obvious negative effect there. However, on the opposite side, it's like, oh, well, there's no decrease. Well, that's kind of different, but also because there's also the issue of there's no control factor for other factors. So, for example, if a trans person grows up in a house where their parents fucking hate them because they're trans, even if they grow up and get surgery, that person might still end up being really depressed because their parents, no matter what, will still fucking hate them no matter what. So, unless we can control for the other factors that lead to like mental health issues for like LGBTQ people, it's really hard to make any conclusive claims. I am always someone who would say, hey, if this is something you really want, again, talk to multiple physicians, multiple psychiatrists, which they're required. Again, they can't just, I mean, like, I guess as an adult you can go into like a plastic surgeon, but even plastic surgeons will be like, hey, have you gotten the sign off from your doctors for this? Like, it's not just people doing this like willy-nilly, like, hey, let's go.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Well, and I think this may just come from a difference of opinion on what the treatment should be, which I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, my belief is that they should they should be kind of tried to be steered back to the normal, which is you are not a woman or you are not a man, you're actually the
Well,
opposite.
there's no such
And
thing.
you are believing that you think that they should be affirmed to what they believe. Is that true?
Well, real quick, steered back to the normal. I don't really. I mean, like by if by normal you mean like the majority, like this.
Cisgendered.
Well, that's not. Well, being cisgender isn't any more normal than being trans. If you mean like sort of like its prevalence in society when you say normal, sure. But usually when we say like normal, it kind of has like because like the opposite of that would be abnormal, which usually has a negative connotation to it. You,
Well,
it's
it is
not.
abnormal, is it not?
Well, not necessarily.
So it is not.
I mean,
So it
there.
is normal for there to be trans people
But what's abnormal about trans people as people?
because that
It's
deviates from the norm,
well,
right?
yeah, but
Am I wrong?
that's what I'm trying to sort of like distinct is that usually when people say like abnormal, it usually like from a like a strictly like definition textbook, like being being red haired is abnormal. But we usually would never call a red haired person abnormal, correct?
Enough. All right, I
Yeah,
see your
that's sort of
point. Fair
it's
enough.
I understand what you're saying in the sense of like the words. However, the issue is that abnormal has kind of taken on a sort of like a negative connotation. I think it kind of sucks, unfortunately, like because like abnormal is just a word, but how it's usually word like it's abnormal something to almost be like derided, like or be feared. It's
Okay.
abnormal, whereas again being having red hair is also abnormal, but like no one would fear. I mean, there are some people, but like those people are nuts. There's like most people would never say like, yeah, you should like fear or deride red hair people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
Just to
like,
clarify though,
good.
I actually think well, actually two things. I actually think that what most like like psychiatrists and physicians who study dysphoria, that's kind of what they do. They don't necessarily like quote unquote steer you back to normalcy, but that is the entire point of like the vetting process. Again, if a kid comes in and says like, "Hey, I think I'm trans," the doctors don't just go, "It's like okay, awesome, let's get you on some like hardcore HRT." They're like, "Okay, let's take a seat. We'll go through multiple sessions. If I actually think there is evidence here of maybe there being something here, you'll see another specialist, and then if they agree, you'll see another specialist, and then we can discuss with your parents the best options and maybe put you on puberty blockers, and then maybe 3 or 4 years from then put you on HRT." So that is a very strong vetting process for kids.
Well, maybe this just comes from my distrust from the psychiatry community, I guess. Again, I just thought of this just now, which is why I have not looked at uh any statistics on it. However, in my experience, I have ADHD, and whenever I walked into the a psychiatry clinic, the guy was just like, "Got ADHD?" And I was like, "I think so." And then he was just like, "All right, here's some meds." You know what I
Oh
mean?
well, of
And
course, but
it's kind of like, and I maybe that just me thinking about it right now. I think what this is coming from is my distrust from that community because I've heard plenty of stories like that. Again, I haven't looked at any statistics, so shame
yeah.
on me, I guess. But um,
Two quick things. One,
okay.
I mean, like, well, ADHD actually, I did a whole video on this. How it actually, even to this day, is actually very misdiagnosed. But
Hmm.
well, like outside of the '90s, because that was back when we didn't really have a lot of. Again, like the mass misdiagnosis of like Ritalin in the '90s wasn't because I mean, like obviously there were some doctors who were just probably lazy and wanted to like make money, but it was mostly born out of one, a misunderstanding of the condition, and two, parents just being very concerned and wanting to do what was right by their children. Like a mother doesn't know if they read a report of ADHD and they think their kid might have it. The mother just like she doesn't really know. She just wants to maybe do the best thing for the kid, and she might like.
Yeah.
And also another big issue, and then when it came to younger children, I talk about this in the video, is that a lot of the vetting for whether or not the kid is like has ADHD was done by the parents. Like imagine this. Like imagine like what percentage of parents do you think would say their kids don't listen to them?
All of them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the issue of like these sort of tests were very like bad in the sense of like, hey, does your kid ever not listen to you? Yes. Does your kid ever like zone out in front of the TV? Oh my god, yeah. And like that was the issue with ADHD. And again, even today there is still like stuff like that happens. But one, that's because ADHD is still sort of misunderstood even by physicians, like not necessarily specialists, but like like more common physicians. Two, it is actually
And I
sort
can
of
attest to that.
it, and yeah,
This
two,
I got all this in I think it was 2017, 2018 when I was outside of high school. So this wasn't like in the 90s because I was actually I was born in the late 90s.
yeah.
So this was in like 2017, 2018 after I got out of high school. Um, so
Well, so just to
I agree that it's still not, where it needs to be.
yeah, well, not even just that, but also too ADHD, and again, I discussed this in the video. It's also a very chaotic. No, I shouldn't say chaotic. It's a very hard to diagnose issue because of how much overlap it had with other medical conditions, bipolar disorder, by
Mhm.
borderline by personal disorder, even depression, anxiety, even lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Like even sleep apnea could like you could think you have ADHD and you really just have sleep apnea. Stuff like that. And so it's not but the key is that like what you said you were 17, 18.
When it happened, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
okay. So
no, I wasn't 17 or 18. It was in 2017, 2018.
oh, so how old were you when this happened?
I think I was like 19,
Okay,
somewhere around
so
19.
you were like an adult, or like you were late teens, 20s. So the difference there is that like obviously like um, stimulants like like Ritalin or Adderall or Vyvanse, they can be powerful and they are like serious drugs. However, there's a difference between like giving a kid your age, like hey, try this for maybe like I don't know, like a couple months and see if it helps, or giving it to like a 3 year old because obviously like the 3 year old is going to have a lot more detrimental effects if they do not have ADHD. Then again, I
Mm.
don't think you should treat 3 year olds for ADHD anyway. But in your case, if like if you try it for a month and it didn't work or like it was having negative effects, you would tell your doctor that in 2 weeks and then they would take you off of it. So it's sort of and unfortunately that
Now I'm
is
saying like my thing was they didn't evaluate me. He was just kind of like I was just kind of like, hey, I have ADHD, and he was like, all right, cool.
oh
Here's
yeah.
some meds.
Well, that's
Here's some
a
Adderall.
did he ask for a sign off from a specialist?
Say again?
Did he ask for a sign off from a specialist?
No.
Okay, yeah, so that's just a shitty doctor.
Yeah, and I
it,
feel like
yeah,
that's kind of a recurring theme in and me working in the medical community. I see this often, and again, maybe it's anecdotal. Again, I haven't looked at any statistics on it, so I just thought about it. However, I think that it is a point that needs to be brought up,
well,
because I think that there's a lot of mistreatment and burnout and really shitty people in the medical community that don't care. They don't give a
I
shit.
I agree, but but we're talking about like this is like a massive difference in scale. So like for example, like there are definitely shitty doctors out there, and we should call out shitty doctors. But that's different than saying, hey, these handful of examples of shitty doctors like speak to a much larger trend. Two, and I'm not trying to defend your doctor, like he sounds like a fucking idiot. But if I was going to try to, I'm assuming like that he probably thought like, hey, maybe he thinks he has ADHD and I'm just lazy, so I'm gonna write him a prescription for this and we'll see if it helps. But if it doesn't, he'll probably like he probably like will be smart enough to stop taking it and let me know and then I'll try something else. He sounds
Yeah,
lazy, but he probably thought that the consequences of giving you the medication wouldn't be super severe. Again, fuck that guy. Like he sounds like an idiot. But still.
he
The
is, and
but
I don't see. I'm not even the same state as him anymore, so I don't see
yeah.
him anymore. But
But the difference there is like, it's not like we have to discuss in severity. You would never go into like a doctor's office and say, "Hey, I have my carotid artery is fucked up," and the doctor would be like, "Okay, let's get you in surgery." like we're talking about like a scale of issues. When it comes to transgenderism, like again, many of the people who study this field understand just how much of a long process it is, and the detrimental effects that misprescribing, like a young person, like HRT or not necessarily detrimental effects, but like sort of like the long term effects that like doing this carelessly or even surgery. They understand the carelessness of how careless it is to just sort of like do it willy nilly. So in that case, because it's so much more of like a hot topic issue and a lot more of a what's the word for involved process, you're probably going to see less of that. But in any case, even so, the fact that people have I understand that people still have agendas. I agree, and those people like should be ousted from their professions if they're like doing it for their own agenda, not to help their patients. However, the entire point of like having a process where you have to see like 3 or 4 specialists to like get the okay, that's the whole reason we have it. Like I agree with you. Like there might be some cases where there is a professional who has an agenda and may like say this kid's trans when they really think he isn't or don't really know. I highly doubt that would happen 4 times in a row. And that's sort of the safeguard. It's like we know this is a big deal, and that's why we're like doing it. It's like checking, not to like trivialize it, but like if you're leaving for the airport, and you need your ID or your passport, you probably check several times to make sure you have it, right? Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, well, like I do. That's like because you don't want to get to the airport and you're stuck, and then you have to go home and you miss your flight.
Yeah.
Okay, this times like 1,000,000 because this is like such a massive idea. They usually will never put kids on. Again, the sort of scenario you're talking about, I'm not saying it could never ever happen. I'm saying given the amount of safeguards and number of different specialists you would probably have to go through, and the number of sign-offs you would have to go through in order to get to like that point in the process, the odds of that happening are like 0.0001% probably. Not saying, again, I don't want to like the reason I'm saying that is like, could it happen? Maybe, like it might, but the odds of that happening are so minuscule that it's not really something that we want to like spread around. But
I'd like to hear your thoughts. And again, this is it's sort of like, it's not supposed to get a gotcha thing. I just genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this. How about, so there's a little bit of talk about how the parents of trans kids are kind of doing this kind of Munchausen syndrome type deal. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on
that. So what do you mean? I know what Munchausen's in, but like in what context is that happening with trans kids?
Do you think that that's what's happening, or if that is even prevalent? And just basically, do you think that is prevalent? And do you think that it is something that needs to kind of be talked about?
So are you asking me if there are parents who are trying to like force their kids to like undergo trans reassignment surgery because they want to sort of like feel special themselves?
Sure. Or it doesn't have to be just reassignment surgery. It can be any sort of the whole line of transgender issues, I guess.
I assume there might be parents out there who are like that, but the difference there is like kind of going back to the ADHD example. It's not as if like the parents of a 13-year-old go to the doctor and it's like, hey, my kid's trans, give me puberty blockers and HRT. If that were ever the case, the parent would come in and say, hey, my kid's trans. The kid would go to the physician, would go to multiple physicians, and then they would be like, hey, I don't think your kid's trans. And then if the parent is like, yes, he is, he totally is, this physician would be like, okay, fuck this bitch, like this, she seems a little bit unhinged. Again, that's the whole reason the safeguard is there. I'm not saying it's not possible that there are parents who would do that, but like, A, fuck those people. I think we agree they're not doing what's best for their child.
Yeah.
And two, the odds of that like being facilitated seem incredibly small. However, on the opposite end is I actually have seen a lot more of the opposite, where a kid will, maybe he's going through depression or something, and he goes to see a physician, and they start talking about things, and then there's a consensus among the physicians that like, hey, this kid might be going through gender dysphoria. I think it would be best for him to maybe put him on puberty blockers just to see how things are, and then check back in maybe a month or every month or so, and see how he's doing. And then the parents, because they sort of aren't educated on the issue, say no, like fuck that, like that's not a thing, that's immoral, that's gross, fuck you, you're brainwashing my child, and then that kid doesn't get the help he needs. And both cases are possible. I would say the latter is a lot more likely in today's society, and we have a lot more like blatant cases of this happening. But in either case, those parents can go fuck themselves because they're not doing what's best for the interests of their child. And they're going against the opinion of several exceedingly well-trained professionals.
Okay. Alrighty, well,
it's not really. It's more of a like I understand what you're saying, because like there always will be fringe cases. The problem I have is that the difficult is like how prevalent, like these things happen, and they might happen, and they could happen, and maybe they do happen. The question is, how prevalent are they in a certain society?
And I agree. And I'm not trying to make a point with this. I'm genuinely asking, have you heard anything about this? What are your thoughts on?
Like the Munchausen's example, I have never heard of an example.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fine.
I think I've heard like maybe an example of a parent like thinking their kids or like I think I remember hearing about like a teacher who thought a kid was like trans, or like in like because like something about like them going to the bathroom, but then like the parents and like psychiatrists got involved, and like immediately they were like, no, this teacher doesn't know what she's talking about. I think that was like one case. However, there are countless cases of trans kids who have been unable to sort of like proceed on any sort of puberty blockers or HRT or any sort of regimen because of their parents being against it for whatever reason, their own beliefs, their own opinions, their own biases, what have you.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's all the questions I got, man. I will say that I think this has been a really productive conversation.
Yeah, we kind of went over. I realized I was just like for a moment I was like, oh yeah, I'll have to think about what to name this, and then I realized that we started off on a topic that had like nothing to do with any. We kind of went all
and we kind of bounced around a little bit. That's all right. I think, like I said, I think that having a conversation is way better than having a debate, because debate is like, oh, I gotta win, and it's just like, well, we're having our conversation. It's more relaxed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'll give you the last word, but I just wanted to propose something, or just kind of like bring it to mind, because based off what you said, I kind of do agree with a style of what you're saying, in the sense of kind of, I'm not like, obviously, like if there was someone who's being vitriolically homophobic, like I think that person should like get kicked in the nuts and like fuck off. But there is something to be said of like, hey, if you are someone and you do face adversity, there is a case where you kind of have to buckle down and just sort of, obviously we can call it out when we can, but things are like, there are some things that we can control, society, and in those cases you need to be sort of like ready for it. However, to turn that around in regard to the reject modernity, embrace masculinity videos, I sort of think that advice should be targeted at these people. Like for example, like I know I have some friends who are kind of into like kinks and like stuff like that. I don't personally. Oh no, I do. I have friends who kind of like wear like feminine clothing or like heels or dresses. However, in those cases, I don't really register it. I just kind of like, it's like, hey, what's up? Like, I just who they are. However, if I were to sort of walk down the street and see those people, I probably wouldn't register it. But even if I did, I would assume I would kind of take your advice and just say, hey, that's different, but it's not my business and I shouldn't comment. So that's
And
kind
I
of
agree,
how,
and I
yeah, that's kind of how I feel
that is
about,
exactly what I would do.
and that's kind of how I feel about like, but again, if we're talking about like who is starting the aggression, like who is aggressing first, it's the people who are making these videos. Like again, like what I said was, hey, if a kid comes out and says, hey, if you work out, you're a piece of shit, fuck that kid. Like, yeah, like you call him out because you're attacking his ideas. But when it's just like a kid saying, hey, look, I look cute in this skirt, and then a bunch of guys online, like they go on TikTok, take the clip, put it online, and make like a dozen compilations of calling this kid degenerate and weak. I think it's very clear who needs to be who. I think it's very clear who the weak, unmanly, and pathetic party is. That's just in my opinion.
And you're free to have that opinion. Again, I think that men wearing skirts is degenerate. And I think that it is, again, I still believe that it is wrong, just personal belief. Not this isn't like a thing that about statistics or studies or anything like that. I just think personally it is wrong. This is just coming from a personal standpoint. But again, am I going to be a dick about it? No.
Do
If
you
someone says they identify as a female or they identify as male, I'm not going to be a dick about it. I'd be like, hey man, what's up, sir? You know, I'm not going to be a dick. But I
um
disagree.
real quick, do you think if a man has a beautiful family, takes care of his wife and his kids, is a soldier, has been at war and has like saved comrades, but then on his days off he likes to kind of like dress up and drag, do you see that man as less manly?
Yes.
Okay. Um yeah.
Again, this is just personal belief. This is not like a, it's not like a, um, this isn't, I don't really know how to put it.
I mean,
This
I
is just a
guess,
personal belief of mine.
yeah, I guess my opinion is just that, like, if you look at the different styles of men throughout history or even today in our world, like the founding fathers wore like heels and tights for Christ's sake. Um, if you look at across like all these different cultures, times, whatever, your style and like in terms of like what you wear, what your like makeup, hair, whatever, that seems very malleable and that it changes very willy nilly throughout culture. So I don't think that
Agree.
is a very good barometer of what makes someone a man or like what makes something masculine. However, if we look back on all these cultures, what are the things that we talk about? We talk about strength, courage, integrity, helping those in need. Those are the things that I would judge. Those are the things that I think make a man. And a man, whether or
And I
not,
agree.
and I've met men who like to wear dresses who hold those traits, and I've met bodybuilders who look like Greek gods who hold none of those traits. And so I've
And I
kind
agree.
of,
And
yeah,
I'll say that I've it is a knee-jerk reaction mostly. I see somebody that wears uh high heels and makeup and a dress, and they may have those traits, but my knee-jerk reaction is you're a degenerate and I don't want to be near you. Um,
which I think,
often,
given our like very like biased, bigoted society, I think that makes a lot of sense because like for so long
yeah,
we've tried to put men into these pigeonholes as to like you have to do this, you have to like these things, you have to do this, and I actually that is predominantly what I think is the main. Or I don't think statistics show that this is one of the predominant reasons why a lot of men are not doing very good because they don't really have. Not only has like the template of like masculinity been changing very quickly over the last like 50 years, but then you also have these like grifting pieces of shit who tell guys like, hey, if you haven't like fucked 10 women or if you don't make over six figures or if your dick isn't like 9 inches, you're not a man. Like all these like red pill, whatever the fuck.
and
um
I agree. I hate those guys too.
yeah, I think that we can agree that like those guys, and I kind of see the same thing with the reject modernity sort of stuff. It's sort of just you're trying to take guys and you're ignoring all the things that I think really does sort of define what a man is. Taking care of those you love, courage, and all of those things are also just what make you a good person. A flannel shirt and hiking boots don't make you a good person. They don't make you a man
I agree.
in my view. Um, And I think the more that we try to restrict men and sort of like see, I mean, on one hand, I think that if a dude is like, hey, I kind of like painting my nails, and I know people out there aren't going to like it, but I'm going to go out there and do it anyway, that seems to be what you're talking about, a person who doesn't really care and is strong enough to even like go against the grain. I think that's one of the most masculine things you can do.
I disagree with that. I don't think that's the most masculine thing you can do.
About
I
not
think that is a
not
good trait to have.
not caring about what other people think and going your own path and not like bowing down to conformity.
I agree. I think that the most manly thing you can do is to um, protect. And again, maybe this is just because I'm more of like a classical guy, I guess. I think that the most manly thing that you can do is to protect someone in danger, and physical danger. Uh, that can like take for instance, right? A woman's being raped in an alleyway. The most manly thing to do and the most morally and just thing to do would be to go beat the shit out of the guy who's trying to rape her and call the cops and have that guy arrested.
Yeah, but
Um,
that doesn't. But you can still do that whether you're wearing a dress or a flannel T-shirt now.
and I agree.
Yeah.
However, my thing is, and again, call this biased or anecdotal if you'd like, but most people that I've met, and I feel like this is the case for most people that I've talked to who they've met, that of people that wear skirts and high heels and or guys that do that at least, um, I feel like the ones that I have met have not been people of strong character and people that are would physically stand up for somebody else, which again, you know, uh, I know it goes back to the point of, oh, well, you were talking about that with the bullying. I'm talking about a different thing. I'm talking about physically. If there were a fight, I don't think that I could trust that guy to back me up, or at least back me up effectively.
Have you ever
Um,
been? Have you ever been in a fist fight?
Plenty, of course.
Really?
Yes,
I have never.
of
What
course.
if? What if? Well, you say that. I have never. I mean, I'm a pretty formidable. I'm 225. I box. I lift. I have never
That's
been in a fist fight.
understandable. I grew up in a pretty rough area, so
Okay. Well, that seems like more of a consequence of. I mean, do you think it in part is due to your own bad choices that you may have ended up in some of those situations?
no, they were just at school. Like I said, I was bullied a lot.
Well, yeah, but but in that case, it wouldn't isn't the unmanly thing the person who's picking on someone they perceive as weaker than them?
Oh, I agree. Again, like we went over this.
It just I think the
The
point I'm
the
making is that sometimes it
the
comes off as like not I don't know if victim blaming is the best word, but it seems like, hey, to be a man you have to do this, but that is being defined or sort of like that is being sort of established due to the unmanly behaviors of other men. And it kind of upsets me that the guys, like in this case, who are the quote unquote victims of the consequences of other men's unmanly behavior, are the ones who are called unmanly instead of the guys who are being, or the guys who are truly weak, the guys who are picking on people weaker than them, the guys who are attacking other men or putting them down or mocking them. It seems like our
more.
society has, instead of like critiquing those men, which I think we totally should, like I think that just makes perfect sense, we're kind of like getting mad at the victims for being victims of it. I don't
I
know.
think both of them are being weak. If you don't stand up for yourself, you are by definition weak.
Yeah,
If
but
you,
wouldn't a gay person like calling out someone for calling them the F slur be standing up for themselves? But in your case, shouldn't that
they can do
person
that.
just walk away?
They're perfectly allowed to do that.
But what's more manly for that person to say like, "Hey, fuck off, dude," or to confront them and get in their face, or to walk away and ignore them?
That's a good question. To be honest, I don't I don't have the answer for that one. I
Yeah,
think I think it depends on situation to situation, I guess.
yeah, maybe. I guess like not no offense. I feel like if you're getting into a lot of fistfights, you're probably doing some. I don't know your life, but at least in my opinion, or at least from my personal experiences, a lot of guys who kind of get into a lot of fights and drama are usually the most ill-tempered. They're not in very
they're not in control of their emotions. They're very insecure,
I
et
was
cetera, et cetera.
very withdrawn. This is all throughout school and everything like that. I was very withdrawn, and I pretty much went to an all black school. And being the white kid, obviously, you're gonna have a little bit of animosity there, between the two of you guys. Again, I had my little circle of friends that I didn't go outside of, but at the playground, at the lunch table, at wherever. Um, you get in a lot of fights, because again, it's a rough area. You're different from everybody else. People don't like that. Um,
Yeah. Well,
so you end up getting in a lot of fights.
maybe I can have you on and we can talk about systemic racism and how it perpetuates really bad areas in certain areas of the country. That'd be fun. But
Okay.
we've been talking for almost 2 hours. I don't want to keep you. Thank you so much. I messaged a lot of people, guys who kind of like commented on the Modernity video and kind of disagreed. Like, well, most of them were just like got triggered, like you can't say it. Like, they were just being babies. But of the people
Because they're
who kind
weak.
of, yeah, but of the people who actually gave who actually gave like or tried to give, I should say, like decent rebuttals. Most of them, like ironically, to kind of go to your point, I think one of the a trait of masculinity is believing in and debating your ideas. So it was kind of funny how a lot of these guys were saying I was beta, and then I was like, hey, do you want to debate these ideas? And they're like, well, I can't. I have a job or something like that. And of the guys who did, so I've had 3 people on so far. One person I talked to last time was it was more of a discussion. We didn't even really have a disagreement. The other 2 people who there were disagreements, they were absolute lunatics. You and I disagree on a lot. Definitely check out, I think I would say just kind of like look into statistics. I mean, even as someone who, given your beliefs, you may not, like no amount of statistics may sway you. But just in the off chance, just to avoid maybe spreading misinformation, because you can make an argument that like, hey, even if X and X does help trans kids, it can still be against your religious beliefs. I don't agree with that, but I have, if someone like for you, like your religious beliefs, I don't agree with them. But I understand that I can't sway you. Like, that's your thing. However, we also agree that like there's not much big utility in like just like really strongly debating it. However, my issue is when misinformation is spread and it leads to other people who don't believe these things being convinced of them with bad data. That is what I am not okay with. If you're someone who's like, hey, I'm really religious and I think gay people are an abomination, I'm like, fuck you, dude, but you know what? Whatever. If someone's like passing around like fake studies, trying to convince other people that gays are abominations, that's kind of where I take issue with.
These are not fake studies. They're actually done. They may be incomplete to your standards.
Well, sorry, just to confirm, bad interpretations of limited data sets, because that's just as bad as if I show you, like, again, I can show you a study showing that the correlation of lung cancer is matched to people who have seen the movie Titanic most times. Doesn't mean there's any correlation causation. That's sort of why interpreting statistics is a lot more important than just citing statistics.
And I agree, but however, that is up to the reader, I think.
No, because I can show
you. Otherwise, why would they put these up? Because I can either choose to agree with, okay, yeah, people that have lung cancer have all watched the movie, whatever, then that must mean that I can either choose to believe that or not believe it.
Yeah,
and I do that based on my own experiences and other information that I've seen, and I can draw inferences from all these sources of information to create an idea and say, okay, this is what I believe.
Yeah, but if that person then went out and started like spreading the study around to convince people, and eventually James Cameron got sued because it was shown that his movie was correlated with like the cause of lung cancer, you'd probably be against that, right?
Of course.
Yeah, because it's not just about people believing stupid things. It's how those stupid things can lead to very real and harmful consequences for other people. That's the key. Like if there are people who are racist out there, like fuck those people. But like I don't know, go live on like a barren island somewhere. Like fuck off. But if that person is like spewing this crap online and it's leading to like racist attitudes being spread throughout the nation, or like currently in like our government right now, negative attitudes and misunderstandings against trans people leading to these bills that are essential for like the health and security of trans people being rejected because the people who are voting on them have no idea on these issues. I have a very big problem with that. We have to combat disinformation with better information. But
fair enough.
But yeah, man, sorry, again, 2 hours. I usually I'm like, oh, let's go an hour, and then we kind of get into the thick of it. It's funny because I see like hour debates, and I'm like, and then I started doing it. I'm like, how the fuck do people do that? Like, I feel like we need at least like a couple hours to kind of like dig through the weeds, but I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. See you later, chat. Take it easy. Take it easy to you too, man.
You too, my man.
Stay safe.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. A lot better than the other bullying guy. That guy was a lunatic. Let's see. Jay Robbins. I agree. Sorry. You know what? You're right. I kind of misspoke there. So going against the grain, I don't think is inherently masculine. Because, for example, funny enough, I remember there was an episode of Hillary Duff. This is like a weird reference. Yeah, you'll have to go back, Johnny. We covered a lot of ground, and what we ended on was not even close to the title. Jorge, people in the comments of my videos, if there's like a disagreement, I'll usually say, hey, if you want to chat, shoot me an email. And that's for anyone. If you ever want to chat on stream, discuss, disagree, agree, just chat about anything, shoot me an email at macabrestorytelling.com. I'll have you on. Yeah, Robbins, sorry, you're correct. Going against the grain in itself is not masculine. So, for example, in this episode of Lizzie McGuire, Gordo likes jazz music or something, and like he's really into it. But then all of a sudden it starts getting popular, and then he stops listening to jazz music because he's not special anymore. So that in the case is just someone going against the grain because they're insecure and they want to feel like they're individual or they're like special. It's actually a sign of insecurity. What I mean by going against the grain is like if I like a certain TV show but all my friends think that's stupid, I'm not going to stop watching it because my friends don't like it. I'm not bowing down to peer pressure. That's a better way to put it. It's not just going against the grain inherently. It's being willing to, if that's what you want to do. That's a better way to put it. You're right, though. I didn't really. 5-hour live stream of TMNT discussion. I have to send an email to the Fire Goddess. I have to do that. Hopefully she will say yes to an interview. That would be awesome. But yeah, sorry, Robbins, you're right. I should have made that more clear. Going against the grain if you need to, not needlessly. Because again, if I actually like tell people this, if all of your, and this is sort of why like that attitude people have of like I'll show them, like I'll prove them wrong. People think that can be very motivating, and it can. It can be like a very good motivator. However, the problem with that is that you're still letting others dictate your behavior. Yeah, Robbins, I didn't explain it well. Thank you. Thank you for calling me on it. If you only do things to spite others, you're still letting them dictate your behavior. Like I met people who were like I'll show them wrong. I'll make $1 million, or I'll start this business, or I'll get jacked, and then they do it, and then the person who they were trying to spite doesn't give a shit, because it's been like a year, like they don't even register them. And now this person has like spent a year doing something that they didn't even want to do because they wanted to like show the other person, and the other person does not give a shit about them. I see that a lot. Again, it can be like that sort of like spite can be like a very strong, a very strong sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? A very strong sort of like individual motivator, but in the long run, it can actually lead to very detrimental effects. Yeah, but yeah, oh crap. My girlfriend asked me if I want food. Shit. Hopefully she hasn't already gone to Portillo's. I don't even know who you are. Basically, Jorge. So yeah, we are. Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I got a little discombobulated. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully it was an interesting discussion. I think I did very well. I think I held my own. I think I offered. I think I like, you know, sort of like cleared. I didn't just argue. I think I cleared up things when they need to be cleared up. And I think I delivered pretty good counter arguments. I think overall, in terms of like someone who I disagree with, I think that was the best I've ever done in sort of like that wasn't really a debate, it was a discussion, but it was sort of, you know, we disagreed on a lot. And I think I did very well in holding my own, and offering counterpoints and sort of, you know, relenting when I needed to relent, but also standing my ground. I think I did really good there. There were some certain things he said that I was kind of like, I kind of wanted to say some more, but yeah, I think I did pretty good. Didn't get too heated, kept my cool, levied pretty good counter arguments and cleared things up. Because that's really, here's the thing. It's not just that, like, if me and him just sort of like spouted our opinions on certain things the entire time, that really wouldn't be very productive. I think the key is that, hey, I just want to make sure we all have the correct information, and then we can make up our minds. And usually in these cases, given the amount of information when it comes to like trans issues or like, you know, issues in the LGBT community or in like, you know, the black community or, you know, whatever, I think once you have a large scope of information, the conclusions are pretty obvious. A lot of like the most, same Robbins, but even like degenerate, I don't even know what that means anymore. Like people throw it around and it's like, I don't, like, do you mean like sinful? Do you mean like bad for society? Do you mean just you don't like it? Do you think it's gross? I don't know. It's a very kind of catch-all word. The issue with degenerate is that it has been used in very, very, very bad contexts to demonize a lot of people and leading to very, very bad results. All the while, no one really even knows what it means. the big irony. It's kind of like a catch-all term to just say thing bad and we should hate thing. Yeah, I think the main thing is that like there are a lot of like bigoted positions. I realize the only way you could actually believe these positions is a lack of a sufficient amount of information giving it nuance. So for example, if I showed you crime statistics against black people, I could see how someone could be led to the like conclusion that like black people were like inherently more violent than white people. But if you give them a copious amount of information on crime statistics, income statistics, systemic racism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you pile all this information on them, and then they use all of that information to come to a conclusion, I don't think you can come to any other conclusion than to presume correctly that, okay, this is a systemic societal issue, not some sort of inherent biological one. And that's kind of how you have to challenge these like bigoted views. It's not just by yelling at them or calling them racist or like calling them like bigots. You just present them the evidence that proves them wrong. And if this person is a good faith person, they will listen to this evidence and they will say, oh, okay, you know what? I didn't know that evidence. Sort of like the discussion we just had. There were a couple times where he's like, well, I haven't looked into it. It's like, well, you should. And maybe when you do, maybe you will change your mind. If that person is operating in good faith, once they see the evidence, they will have to change their mind. Because how can you not change your mind when you're shown evidence disproving what you believe? However, if that person doubles down and refuses to accept that evidence, that is when you know this particular person is acting in bad faith, and you can just write them off, because they, if you show a person, it's like dealing with like a flat earther. I can show them piles of evidence of the truth that the world is around. And this person, because they're acting in bad faith, will never believe me. They will always say, no, that's fake, that's fake. But at that point, you just have to call the person, okay, crazy, bye. Like, because, like, what are you going to do with that person? But those people really aren't, like, in themselves the people at risk, right? Like, these debates are not necessarily for me and him to change each other's mind. It's to kind of get this proper information out there, so people who might be on the fence or people who don't have all the information can flesh out that understanding and then come to the proper conclusion based on all the evidence. And hopefully I was able to do that tonight, for a number of issues. Again, I thought I did pretty good. I don't think I stumbled at all. I wasn't aggressive. I think there were a couple times where I tried to talk over him. I shouldn't have done that. I should have chilled back. It was a long discussion. I think at the beginning I kind of wanted to try to keep it under an hour, so I tried like talking a little faster, like, hang on, I want to get these points. But then I was like, about like an hour in, we were like, okay, we're doing this for like a couple hours. We have time to address all these points. There were a couple times where I think he didn't. I don't think he purposely gish galloped. There were a couple times where he did mention a number of things, like, well, gay people, trauma, they have suicide, and so I kind of had to take a mental note of like, shit, I don't want to leave any of these unaddressed. I don't think I left any points unaddressed. Actually, before I go, were there any points that he brought up that that I didn't address in terms of like either disproving or like giving more nuance to? I think I got everything. I just want to make sure I didn't leave any stone unturned. I hope asking you guys isn't too much. Like, I hope none of you were still like, oh shit, it's a 2-hour conversation, bro. I don't know. You may have forgot like me. I don't think I did. I think I covered everything. Oh, the Batman stream? Oh yeah, the new podcast is up. No One's a Critic. Kino thought up that name, and I was like, dude, No One's a Critic is like the best name for a pod. Like, I loved it. I was like, fuck yeah, dude. I can't believe no one's actually used that. Yeah, and that's the thing, Robin. There's a difference between someone being uneducated and like bigoted. Uneducated people, you have to handle these people differently. The Batman, what I liked about it the most was that it was a, oh, my girlfriend, she's so sweet. I can't, sorry. Thanks, though, babe. She's very sweet. The Batman is what I liked about it is they actually gave Batman an arc. Like in the video I did on it, I kind of proposed the idea that it's really not a Batman film, but it's more of like a Batman origin story. It's this man who may wear the Batman costume, but he's not Batman yet. And at the end of the film, he kind of comes around. And he kind of sees how to be Batman. Again, I compare it to that moment in Batman Begins where he throws the gun into the river. It's a story of a man finding out how to become Batman, not becoming Batman or being Batman. And that's kind of what my argument was. And I love that. I love the fact that there was actually an arc. I kind of have a theory, and I would love this, if the entire trilogy isn't even about Batman, but it's about Vengeance, this character, slowly becoming Batman and finding out how to be Batman. And the final line of the entire trilogy is I'm Batman. And like the entire thing will be about his transformation into the hero. Because Batman, as he stands, who he is, he's kind of a boring character sometimes. Like Bruce Wayne, sometimes he can be boring. Like static, kind of like Superman. Yeah, I think that would be dope. But thoughts on more wheels or doors? I think wheels. I would guess wheels. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, if you guys ever want to talk about something, disagree, argue, debate, whatever, shoot me an email, macabrestorytelling@gmail.com. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next time.